Stu was not just a fan of Lucille Ball. Everybody's a fan of Lucille Ball, but he was like a buddy of Lucille Ball.
Here, get a shot of it.
Am I recording though, Stuart? That's what I want to know.
What? Yeah, it's rolling.
So these are 35mm work prints from Here's Lucy. Tons and tons of scripts. Gary ended up telling me to throw most of this out. So you know where this is now? In my garage.
Did you know, Lucy, I've watched you since I was a kid. I know, dear. I know. I've heard it a million times. I've always dreamed of being in a Lucy show with you.
Stuart!
All right.
I hear about what a taskmaster she was, push people around. You have to keep in mind, she was a woman in power well before women were in power.
It wasn't pushy or bossy.
Be careful with my camera.
Sure.
She knew her stuff.
You're panning too fast.
A comedy world has lost a legend. Lucille Ball, the first lady of comedy, died this morning at Los Angeles.
So no matter how many tears we cry today, the laughs outnumber them. I love Lucy.
You can call me whatever you want.
I'm going to call you Stu. I'm Jeff in Las Vegas. It's such a thrill to meet you.
That's nice to meet you too, Jeff.
You know, I'm Generation X, but I'm right at the cusp of a baby boomer, you know, right at that. So I was born in 66. So
you're a baby.
Yeah. So watching your documentary, Stu Show, it just, you know, I'm 8, 9, 10 years old when all of these shows, they were my life, you know, from Lucy to Jeffersons to All in the Family, MASH, you name it. When you're an 8-year-old kid in the mid 70s, you know, television is everything, right?
Yeah, yeah. I saw all that stuff first run.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I just, watching your documentary, you just had an amazing life in Hollywood. I mean, your story is just remarkable.
Well, thank you. It's you're looking back on it. It is, you know, it's being in the right place at the right time and having a little bit of talent along the way.
Just a little bit. I noticed you had a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you are the caretaker of classic television, you know, so I just wanted to say thank you for that because, you know, there's been so much concentration on movies for the last century. Our television heritage is lost, is not being preserved. And when you see reruns and stuff, it's the worst quality. So hopefully, you know, your documentary will give some sort of priority to saving our television history.
I would hope so. It's twofold. I agreed to do the documentary, not to show off my film collection, not to brag about my relationship with Lucille Ball or plug my own show. It was really to show the general public that if you get mean enough and aggressive enough, you can fight the medical industry and emerge victoriously. But along the way, if you find that preserving classic television and getting to know Lucille Ball and working for her are interesting enough facts to bring you along the way, more power to you. You know?
We'll talk about that because your documentary is twofold. You're right. It's about classic television and preservation in your life, and then also about your wife. So, but let's start with the classic television. Your relationship began with Lucille Ball with a college class. I mean,
yeah, which I almost didn't take. It's an interesting story because I had been working in the business giving away tickets to fill the TV studios in Hollywood. And one of the shows that I was giving away tickets for was One Day at a Time. And the director on that show happened to have directed Lucy in Here's Lucy, her third sitcom. And at the same time, I was in my last semester at Cal State Northridge, and they had signed Lucille Ball to teach a class on Monday nights, television aesthetics, which I had already taken with a different teacher 3 years prior. But they were so worried that they wouldn't fill this class. They not only had it in the largest auditorium on campus, but they opened it up to non-majors. And they wanted to get as many TV majors in there as they could, obviously, because, you know, if you're studying television, who better than Lucille Ball to instruct you? So the director on One Day at a Time overheard me talking about, well, I don't know whether I want to take this class or not. It's the same class I took before, and I do need an elective to finish my term there. And then he said, don't take the class if Lucille Ball is teaching it, if you're a Lucy fan, because she's not the Lucy Ricardo or Lucy Carmichael that you've seen on television. She's very tough. She's very demanding. She's bossy. She's pushy, and your bubble will be burst. And I went back to my counselor at Cal State Northridge, who was desperately trying to get me to take this class. And I told him exactly what this director had told me. And he said, I've been in the business a long time. He was a former director at the local ABC O&O in Los Angeles. And he said, I've learned over the years never to judge anybody by what somebody else tells me. I make up my own mind after I meet them and interact with them. That was the best advice he ever gave me. And I don't know whether he said it because they were paranoid about filling the class or whether he was genuine about that and he saw potential in me to make it in the business. But if I hadn't taken that class, and by the way, she was nothing like the director said she was. There were elements there, but she was motherly, she was warm, she was friendly. It was almost a 180 from what this director had to tell me. It's just that he was one of these persnickety guys who thought he had to be in charge. But when you work on a Lucy show, she's the boss. It's not unlike Milton Berle or Bob Hope or Sid Caesar or any of those classic people, any of those pioneers. You do what they say, whether you think it's right or wrong. It's their butt on the line there. But once you understand that, it's simpatico.
But you're just saying the executive came out, is what you're saying during those college courses.
What she was, it was a 3-hour Q&A every week. You could ask her anything you wanted about television. The non-majors all failed the class because they didn't ask questions. They just sat there in awe of her. But me, I excelled. I couldn't wait because I had already done a lot of research on her and I knew her career really well. And I was very interested in how the 3-camera filming technique came about. So I was one of her prized pupils and we bonded right away. And a couple of years later, when they had an opening in their company, she brought me right in. So it was being in the right place at the right time, being knowledgeable, having a little bit of talent, and just, you know, she could spot a phony. If you were there to ogle her and just, oh, Miss Ball, blah, 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 she wouldn't have the time of day. But if she saw that you had potential, she gave you the world.
Yeah, and you ended up working at Desilu and archiving.
Well, it was Lucille Ball Productions by that. I'm not that old.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I meant. And you archived all of her shows. And
I did.
And Gary Morton said, look, we need someone to go down and catalog and organize all these things. Right. I mean, talk about keys to the candy store, right?
Oh God, I was a kid in a candy store. You summed it up perfectly. They had all the stuff, but the gentleman who was her publicist passed away in 1981, and he was in charge of all that stuff. And they just, one of the things about Lucy and Desi and Gary to a certain extent is they hired people they knew they could trust and they let them do their jobs. So they never really cared about, I mean, they cared about what was there, but they didn't learn how it was inventoried. And so what I did was take all of these hundreds and hundreds of computerized papers that the Film Vault had, that Howard McClay, who was the person who passed away, understood and knew where stuff was. And I kind of simplified it for them. And also at the same time, I redid the inventory in a way that was easy to understand, so that if I wasn't around, Gary could call the vault and say, I need print shelf 4, position 6 pulled. He would know exactly what was there. So that's what I did for them. And I did that for them up until the day she passed.
And watching your documentary, your archive is a classic TV lover's treasure trove, you know?
Yeah, I have my own vault here.
Yes.
Right over there, right behind the wall over here. It's all there.
Beta tapes, you know, laser discs. You know, I had about 2,000 laser discs in my collection, and I ended up
a man after my own heart. Here we are.
And I mean, I started back in the 80s when I graduated from high school. I started with one video store in 1984. By 1991, here in Las Vegas, I had 5 video stores, and 2 of them rented and sold laser discs. So I had a massive collection.
Oh my goodness, you owned all those?
I owned them. So, but 2 years ago, I decided to downsize. So I sold my entire collection to someone on eBay. They drove out from LA. They took all couple thousand, because 15 years had gone by. I so much hasn't put a disc in, you know, so I was trying to hold on to them. I couldn't. And get this, Stu, 20 years ago, I started collecting 16mm films like you did. But you have a big jump on me. I had classic TV shows. I had educational films, feature films, and I had maybe 120 in my collection. I had special canisters, you know, that could breathe. I've dealt with vinegar syndrome. I mean, you were just preaching to the choir in this.
Why haven't I met you until today, Jeff? This makes no sense to me at all.
Right. Now, get this. When I sold my house and moved 2 years ago, I liquidated all my 16mm films. Nobody cared. I would like show them during the summertime. I pull out the projector and they would look at me like I was crazy. Nobody enjoyed it like I did, you know, and I had some great time. I had Andy Griffith's show. I had Star Trek. I had I Love Lucy. A lot of my things were read, but I'm telling you, looking at your collection, and I know they're very dear to you, you have a valuable collection. When I sold stuff on eBay, those 16mm collectors out there would snatch up this stuff, you know, but they're very particular. Is it vinegar? Is it red? Is it splices? Is it
a network print with original commercials?
Right, or syndicated, or an airplane print. You know, there was so many aspects to that. So I had a crash course 20 years ago learning how finicky film collectors are and what they're looking for. But looking at your collection, I was drooling. I mean, you just have an amazing, and that's where a lot of this preservation is going to be, in hands of collectors like you.
Fortunately, my daughter is going to carry the torch, but in the case she doesn't, in my will, it's specified none of this is to be sold on eBay. It is to be given to, I have a handful of millennials that follow the show. Most of the people that watch my show every other week are my age, but I have a handful of millennials, and I wouldn't call you a millennial. You're what did you say? Generation?
I'm Generation X. Yeah.
All right, so you're about 10 years behind me, okay? Yeah. But I have 4 or 5 millennials that are really into this stuff, and my daughter has specific instructions that if, for whatever reason, she doesn't want to carry the torch and keep it going, there's a list, but they have to come here on their own dime and they have to cart the stuff away on their own expense. I'm not going to stick my daughter with any of that, but I'm not going anywhere for a while.
No, I hope. Of course not. No.
I hope I'll be around for a while.
And you know what? I was thrilled to see that you're in charge of Dick Van Dyke's collection now.
That just happened. I've been friends with Dick and his wife Arlene for about 12 years, and they were going through stuff, and Dick forgot that he had boxes and boxes of films that date back to when he was on CBS as the host of the morning show there.
Wow.
Nobody has seen any of that stuff. This is pre-Dick Van Dyke show, and it's wonderful. And I'm cataloging that for them right now. And some of it is starting to go vinegar, so we're digitizing the stuff that we have to get going on right away. Some of his original Dick Van Dyke shows are just starting to smell, but they project well, they look okay, and so those will be preserved.
Boy, when that syndrome starts, man, it's the worst.
It broke my heart. You know, I recently moved up here to the mountains. I'm semi-retired, and 35 years in Chatsworth, all this stuff was stored in the same place. So it gave me a chance to get it all out and move it into the new facilities here. Fortunately, out of about 1,500 reels of classic television, really only a dozen or so went bad. I mean, some of them are starting to smell. There's this stuff that you can buy now called camphor, and you throw it into the can with it, and it actually restores and gets the vinegar out of it. But you got to catch it right at the right time.
Film is so fragile, and it just takes so much attention and so much. And I mean, I put a lot of time and effort into my collection, and it took up a lot of time, but you really have to be dedicated to preserve a film collection.
You do. And you're right. People within this day and age of streaming and DVDs and Blu-rays, why do we have film? Because it's cool.
It is.
It's the original stuff. It's the original elements. And yes, Andy Griffith and I Love Lucy are on DVD and Blu-ray, but not with the original commercials, not the way they aired in the 1950s.
Or the sound of the film going through the gate. Don't you love that?
I do. And you know, it's funny. I have a print of A Night at the Opera, the Marx Brothers, and I was running it for Janine upstairs a couple of months ago, and my neighbor happened to stop by, and he came in and he goes, "What's that noise?" And I said, "We're actually running a movie in the great room. Come in." And I had the screen set up, and I had the 2 projectors in the back so I could do a changeover and the whole thing. And he's like, "This is so cool, watching a film on a screen." Well, duh, you know.
And Night at the Opera, one of the most ridiculous openings to a film ever. Jump cut to a restaurant. We don't know where we are, what's going on.
I have, you know, I don't want to get too technical, or your viewers are going to turn us off, but there is a theory about what happened there. There's about 30 seconds missing from the opening title into where Groucho says his first line. And this is what I heard. It's Margaret Dumont, you know, waiting and waiting and waiting for him. And as you know, they kind of cut to right where he turns around. Right. So what's cut there is nothing that really matters. But for somebody like you and me, you know, that's like exciting if that footage could be found anywhere.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like the spliced up horse feathers print in the middle.
Yes.
if anybody could find all of that, something clean where there weren't a million splices, because those are on the negative. And again, we're getting way too technical for you.
Oh, it's my show. I don't care. But also, Stu, about 20 years ago, they found in a building about to be demolished all the missing footage for It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. They did that box set that came out on Laserdisc. I sent one to Kat Kramer. She could not believe, the footage that they found. And when you see it now, how it just, these scenes keep going, or there were scenes like that, you could see where it changes. But there's just things out there that are waiting to be discovered still.
Oh, I hope so. For years and years and years, the I Love Lucy pilot that was kinescoped at what was KNXT in Los Angeles was eventually found. And anytime, see, that was the thing. Right after Lucy died, anything Lucy and Desi that nobody had seen before was gold. Milton Berle found a special that the two of them did for him right before they divorced, and lots of wraparounds were done when I Love Lucy was rerun in the 50s in prime time, so that the writers could have a week off, or the year that she was pregnant and giving birth to Desi Jr. There were a lot of reruns from the first season because she had to rest, and they shot new openings, wraparounds they're called, for these episodes to lead them into the reruns. And even though they're just setups, gee, remember the time when so and so, it's still new footage, and people like you and I go crazy when we find something.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know if this is in your collection, it wasn't mentioned, but I love the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour. Those are some of my favorite episodes. Were any of those on 16 millimeter?
Oh, you mean in her vault?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they were all there, including the 75-minute version of the first one. There's an example right there that was supposedly lost. The story there was they went 15 minutes over, and the U.S. Steel Hour gave them that time so that they could finish the show. And then CBS cut the show to 60 minutes when they started rerunning them in the summer during the 60s. And one of the things that I found, she had a whole wall of Lucy Desi Comedy Hours, but some of them were the original Westinghouse and Ford shows, but most of them were the CBS reruns starting in 62 through 67. That was the first time I ever discovered Lucy and Desi. I didn't discover them on I Love Lucy in the morning until I was homesick. They used to rerun those hour-long shows during the summer in the early and mid 60s, and that's where I discovered them. So I saw the hour shows before I saw the half-hour shows. In any case, I'm seeing Cruise to Havana, one big reel, 62. Cruise to Havana, one big reel, 63. Then I saw 3 reels that said Cruise to Havana. And I said, why is this on 3 reels? Lo and behold, I open it up. It's the 1957 original broadcast that ran 75 minutes.
Oh man, I love this.
So yeah, you can imagine. And then, I was so excited because in the collector's world, this was, the zenith. And I
the
called
Lost
Lucy.
City. You're finding the city of gold.
This was the highest peak. I called Lucy and I said, I found the 75-minute version of Cruise to Havana. She said, that's nice, dear. See, she had no concept.
When they go to Vegas, I'm a Las Vegas native. So when they go to Vegas looking for uranium with Fred McMurray,
that was the first show they shot on location.
Yeah, and I love how CBS put those out in box sets, a few years back. The Here's Lucy, all of those, they really took the time to make these for collectors. And I just absolutely adore those. So,
and that's because Tom Watson, who was her publicist after Howard McClay passed, they kind of split the duties between me and Tom. I was in charge of the film, and he wrote all the press releases and her speeches for her when she appeared in public. Tom Watson was the supervising producer of those films, and he's like you and me. So the right person was doing those, and that's why we have these wonderful box sets.
We need to call him up. I've always wondered why CBS didn't do Gunsmoke. Here's this incredible legacy of, why they didn't restore those and put those all out.
Well, aren't they out now? I thought all 20 seasons are out.
Are they out? I haven't noticed.
I could be wrong about. They've done a couple of best ofs.
Yeah,
but I thought that they did eventually release them all. But they don't know where a Gunsmoke expert is. I'm sure there's one out there somewhere.
Right. But, one thing I loved also about your documentary, I have been going for years to the Hollywood Collectors Show in LA, whether it was at the Beverly Garland or it was at, I really get upset when people criticize. They don't understand, fans like you and me, when we see our idols there, they think it's where the stars go to die and it's pathetic. I'm like, no. This is to meet your idols, everyone from you. I mean, I've got so many autographs and pictures with people, people I've watched my whole life. I mean, those shows are so necessary. And
They are. They
yes,
are because
absolutely.
like my show, a lot of the people that do those autograph shows come on my show.
Right.
And usually if they're lucky, they'll get a sound bite from somewhere else for 5 minutes or whatever. But here I give them 2 hours and we talk about their lives and careers, and we show clips and stuff. And they leave here going, I haven't worked in 10 years, but this guy made me feel like I'm still working, And it's not just me. There's a lot of us like you out there that really appreciate this. And when these autograph shows started back in the early 90s, a lot of the celebrities were weird about collecting money for their photos, because for years they just sign a photo if somebody asked, just send a self-addressed stamped envelope. But then it became, and this is a good, I was sitting with, I was helping the Dennis the Menace cast. It was Jay North and Gloria Henry and Jeannie Russell. And we were all sitting around together and this conversation came up. It's like, geez, are they doing the right thing, charging for their autographs? And then Jeannie said, our residuals ran out in like 1965. So why don't we just consider this residual money that Screen Gems is not going to pay us? And that was a great way of looking at it, because it's like the fans don't care. They'll pay. You can have your picture taken with them. You get a signed autograph. You can talk to them.
We're giving back. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's not like they don't want to pay. It's like you're not demanding they take out their wallets and stuff. So that's. And then when I convince celebrities that I know to do these shows, that's the first thing I say, I don't know about charging for my autograph. Look at it as residual money. The studios are still making money off of all of those shows.
Oh, absolutely. They're making.
You think Antenna TV is not paying Screen Gems to show Hazel and Dennis the Menace and all that stuff? So they're all still making money. The actors haven't got a dime in years from those
wrong.
shows.
That's so wrong. In our final moments here, I wanted to talk about the second half of your documentary about, so tell us about the awareness that you were bringing with your story.
As I said earlier, I did the film not to show off that I knew Lucille Ball and not to show off and plug my show and not to brag about my archives of television. I did the film to show the general public that you can, I don't want to say fight the system. The healthcare system in this country can be great and it can be terrible. And fortunately, just like any other business out there, there's good people and there's bad people. The problem here with the healthcare industry, on top of that, is you're dealing with human beings and human lives. So it's a little bit more serious. If you find a jerk at a mortgage company that won't give you a loan, that's not the same thing as finding an incompetent, nursing assistant or something who's got 50 patients they've got to deal with and can't help the one that you're having a problem with at that moment. And that's the problem. Like any other business, the healthcare industry is a for-profit business. So get those patients in, get those checks from the insurance company. It doesn't matter, just generate the income. And sadly, that's how the system works. So you have to get tough. You have to get mean sometimes. You got to let them know that you care about that loved one. And if they're not going to help, you're going to do something about it. My battles with the insurance company, my battles with the incompetent people at some of the assisted living places, which are all bad as far as I'm concerned, my opinion. I have it in my will after what I went through with Janine, that if I become incompetent and I can't function, that I'm to have full-time care at my house here. I tried desperately to have that done several times during our 9-month ordeal, but the insurance company wouldn't pay for it. I had our insurance company rep in tears several times, to the point where she finally said, I've never dealt with anybody like you before. I'm going to fight harder with the insurance company to get stuff done for you than I have for anybody else. And that's how you get through to them. That's how and she did. She got the insurance company to pay for stuff that they never would have paid for. But that's what you have to do. You have to get mean. You have to.
You were a champion. Yeah, you were a champion.
Well, and again, people are calling me that. And it's like, if you love the person that's, about to die, you kind of just go into that mode. It's like second nature. You just go into that, and it's like a reaction. Right. And so people are like you are calling me champion. They're calling me a hero. You just do it because you know it's the thing to do. Right. And the statistics show that 50% of people who are met with a spouse or a significant other who has a emergency situation or a possibility that they'll be lost to cancer or to a stroke, or in Janine's case, a brain aneurysm, 50% of the people walk away. They walk away because they can't take it. It's like, let her family deal with it. Let his family deal with it.
Well,
And I never had that feeling. I did the opposite. I married her because even as an advance directive, I couldn't get stuff done. But once we were married and she still had a handful of surgeries ahead of her, it was like, okay, give her the surgery. Yeah, well, and you are? And I said, her husband, bam, end of discussion. And that's how we got her well. And
Well,
again, it's second nature. You just go into that mode.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And I wanted to mention in our final moments here, he was best man at your wedding.
Yes.
And the current news about Tony Dow, his cancer returning. I'll tell you, Stu, last year, Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow, when they were together at a convention, they were always back east. And I was always frustrated being here in Las Vegas. They finally came out to the West Coast 4 or 5 months ago. I had my plane ticket. I was ready to go. I paid for the professional picture. I've met Tony before many times, but never Jerry. He was always back east. He never came west. He would never come west. They were there together and something happened and I couldn't make it. So I know. So I wanted a picture with Wally and the Beaver more than anything. And everyone, my family and friends knew how excited I was, but for reasons I just couldn't go. And then hearing Tony earlier this week, his cancer returning, and I just, my heart breaks.
It was 10 years. And I think it was prostate and it was stage 1 10 years ago. And Lauren, his wife, kept it quiet because it was no big deal. And he's been in remission. And for the last few months, he just hasn't been feeling well. He's been having trouble walking from room to room without being short-winded. He was having trouble talking. And again, here's our healthcare system. Again, 9 different doctors with 9 different opinions. And I'm talking to her on the phone and I said, Lauren, it's time you go Stu. We used to say going postal. It's now we can refer to it as going Stu. And she did. And sadly, that was the diagnosis. And I found out about it when you and everybody else did, because the last couple of times I called there to see how he was doing, she kind of said, not a good time, not a good time. And so I stopped because I didn't want to keep bugging them. But you want to talk about wonderful people. Tony Dow is Wally Cleaver. He is everybody's older brother. He is the nicest, sweetest, most down-to-earth, genuine guy. And Lauren is kind of like me with Janine. She is his protector, and she's a wonderful, warm. They're just terrific people. And this is what makes me so mad is that it's just not fair. It is not fair. He was the picture of health. He never smoked, he never drank, never did drugs.
Right.
And now this happens.
But in your documentary, commenting on your journey with your wife, they were saying about if that happened to them being there. I mean, it was just talk about foretelling,
I know.
Yeah.
And we're having a screening. We're having a cast and crew and family and friends screening in Hollywood in a couple of weeks. And those people who have seen the film, like you have, point to that one part of the film where Lauren is singing my praises a little bit too much. And Tony says, well, I want him to be my advocate. And if he can't, I want you to be my advocate.
Jeez,
and in lieu of what's just happened, it is so ironic and so sad. I've just, but I mean, this is it. This is why we've got to do something about the medical industry. It can't all be about the money anymore. We're dealing with human beings here. And if I can just get this point across, that if you get aggressive enough, they'll listen to you and they'll do what you say. That's the key, because if they see that you don't care about your loved ones, they're not going to.
Absolutely.
It's just horrible situation.
Well, Stu, our 10-minute interview turned into 30 minutes. I mean,
good luck editing this, Jeff.
I could editing. No, I don't edit anything. My show's 30 minutes long. It's going to go the whole thing. You're going to be a whole episode. But I'm just thrilled to meet you. I could talk to you all day. I'd love to meet you sometime. So we'll stay in touch.
The next autograph show is in July. I'm 75 miles north of there now. I used to be 15 minutes away, but I just got sick of living in LA with the traffic and the noise and the whole big thing. But I'm 75 minutes north of where those autograph shows are in Burbank. So anytime you want to come up and see this place, we can.
I will see you in the July one.
Excuse me?
You're going to be there for July?
I am. I just booked 2 celebrities for them. So I will be there probably on Saturday, not on Friday.
I always go on Saturday anyway. So, okay, cool. I will see you there in July. Thank you so much for your story. And it was a great pleasure meeting you.
Absolutely. A fellow film collector. What can I say? You're terrific, Jeff. Thank you.